Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's great to see you all. I just want to apologise before I start. This is going to be a really rubbish talk because I've had to cut it out. Cut so much of it out, Louise wouldn't let me say most of it. So you'll just have to do with this.
That's enough. That's it.
Okay. It's just amazing to see you all here tonight. Thank you so much for joining in these celebrations of 40 years of ESco. We had a wonderful time last week celebrating with our clients, but tonight is extra special because so many of you here have been involved in creating the ESco of today. Many of you work at ESco, and you've come tonight with your partners. Welcome to you all. And others are friends who've worked with us or been really supportive, and welcome to you all as well. Some of you have just been loving and caring to me as I've fallen apart over the years, and I thank you so much for that. When Elaine and I started at ESco, there's Elaine down there on the table, 1984, we had no idea what we were doing. She still doesn't have any idea what she's doing. Although we'd drawn up a really good business plan, hadn't we? With some really positive assumptions, but we couldn't know what lay ahead. We had no idea. In April 1984, a few months before ESco's birth in August, I had become Christian. The following May, Roger and I moved from Orpington to Finching Fields, and then just 1 month later, Claire was born, and ESco was beginning to sprout and grow. Which is why, when I look back on 1984, it was a really pivotal year of my life. Just about everything changed. I challenge anyone who thinks that Christianity isn't life-changing. I shan't be saying any more about that, but if anybody wants to know, I'd be very happy to talk to them. For those of you working at ESco today, we didn't start out as a subscriptions bureau. To kick-start ESco, I'd identified our target client list and set about calling them, which was a scary thing. That's really not an easy thing to do, but it did work. I spoke to many interesting people, gaining knowledge, understanding, and work as well, and forming strong business relationships. And who would have guessed that this would lead to ESco becoming the top independent subscriptions bureau in the UK 40 years later? Whoever says cold calling doesn't work, think again. When Claire was 8 years old, ESco moved from its Wanstead birthplace in Elaine and Richard's spare bedroom into our spare bedroom. Roger worked in Croydon then and lived away most of the week. Elaine and I spent much of our time working out how to actually do the work, which by then was coming in a steady flow. We'd also employed our first member of staff, and we were thinking about a second. There were some dramatic ups and downs along the way. The biggest for me was in April '86 when Elaine left business to start a family. By then I had one baby, aged 10 months, and another on the way. I know I was mad, but there you go. I've always been a glass half full sort of person, so I started to think how I could make this work on my own. My light bulb moment was realising that without Elaine's salary, I could afford a nanny. So, with nanny on board, I borrowed another £4,000 from my very brave bank manager and bought a porter cabin in which to rehome ESco across our yard. My once dark brown hair, nearly black in fact, was going grey very quickly. Not long after this, I received a call from a man called Tony Pike. He was the owner of Smithfield Publishing, and they were based in, you guessed it, Smithfield Meat Market. By now, I was 6 months pregnant, and I went to visit, kicking aside bits of, I can still remember it, smelly meat and holding my breath as I ran through the market and up the metal stairs to their offices, wondering what on earth I was getting myself into. He had a list of subscribers which were held on little cards that had been managed by an Australian girl who'd legged it back home. "Can you help?" he said, hopefully, working on the principle that, as I always did then, that one should never say no to potential business. I confidently said yes. And a few days later, Tony arrived down our farm track and dumped several huge black bin bags on the floor, saying, "Here's all the paperwork, thank you so much." And I remember I was aghast, and I knelt down very carefully, because I had a very large baby bump by then, knelt down on the floor and opened each of those sacks. And well, let's just say I started to think about running a tea room, which would have been so much easier. You know, scones and all that money up front. Anyway, not long after that, on the morning of the 27th of August 1986, I woke and realised this was not only wages day, I was about to produce my second baby. I called Roger in Croydon, asked him to come home, and then I sat down to do the wages. 2 hours later, Roger stuck his head inside the porter cabin door and said, "I thought you were going to have a baby." And off we went to WJC, for those of you who remember it, maternity hospital in Braintree. I'll never forget the midwife. She opened the door and said, "What? You again? What are you doing?" And at 12:30, I produced little Louise. At 1:30, I called the office to ensure no catastrophes, all was well, and by Wednesday evening, I was back home. What a day. By a very strange coincidence, the history repeated itself almost 30 years later when Louise, then responsible for the wages, went into labour having Tilly, also trying to get the wages done on that day. It's just you couldn't really make it up, could you? 2 weeks after Louise's arrival, I was back in the office. My working day could consist of talking to a publisher 1 minute, quoting or capturing data the next, invoicing, unloading lorries, writing reports, printing letters. Sometimes we'd have to work through the night to meet a deadline. You know, we've employed many hundreds of people at ESco from local villages and towns, and every single one has had a hand in shaping ESco. You know, it's because of them that we've continued to evolve and flourish. Jenny Bell, where are you? There you are, Jenny. Told me one day that her brother worked for a publisher, and I just thought, that can't be right. But anyhow, my ears pricked up. A local publisher in Finchingfield? Surely not. William Reed, she said, in Great Barnfield. So I didn't really know very much about them, so I wrote to Nicholas Reed, Jenny, you'll remember this, and I offered him 50% off a mail shot if he would support a local business, which he jolly well should be doing, because he was local as well. And he said, yes, of course, we could meet, and off I went to meet him, finding myself going to Crawley in West Sussex, not Great Barnfield at all, which is where William Reed are based. But it was a great meeting, and we just got loads of work from that one meeting, handling directory sales, direct marketing campaigns, and subscriptions. You know, it's not what you know. And if you know Jenny, it's even better. In the late 90s, I met Ian Kilby. None of you will know who he is. He was actually a competitor who'd written his own subscription software, which I was interested in. Ian and I hit it off immediately. You know, sometimes in life that just happens. We didn't buy his software, but we became firm friends, meeting for lunch once a month, taking it in turns to just share bits of information, and we travelled to each other's offices. And then one day he became ill, and he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, but he was sure he was going to recover. A year later he called me and he said, "Sue, I'm not going to make it. Could you take my clients on?" I was so shocked, but I said, "Well, of course I'll help you." And he emailed me just a few scanned details. 2 days later his wife rang and said that he'd collapsed and he was in hospital. Could we come quickly and take his client's work? Lee and I, wherever you are, Lee, we travelled to his office on that Sunday to extract all the data. I don't know how you did it, Lee, but you did. And it was a really long haul. But later that day I visited Ian in hospital just to reassure him. He was really poorly, and I wasn't really sure that he was even aware that I was there. But I whispered to him that we'd got all his data, that we'd look after his clients, which he was so worried about, and that I would make sure that his wife had a share of any profit we made. And he was quite still, but I know he heard me because a tear rolled down his cheek, and he died a week later. And that whole experience is part of what has shaped us, and it's underlying the importance to me of the relationships that we have with the people that we work with. They really matter. Shortly after this, we added renewals letter shopping to our services with the arrival of IPC. Some of you will have heard of IPC. They don't exist now, but they were well known. Though they wanted what they'd let themselves in for, I think, as they drew down that track and looked at our office. And running a business from the piggery was very challenging, especially with prestigious publishers as clients. Some of you will remember my small office, which is now the corner of Louise and John's kitchen, where all those important meetings were held. I would sit at the table with my back to the wall, and the visitors would always sit opposite me, and there was a small high window behind my head. One day the Economist's marketing manager was visiting, so much to do, we tidied up and put our glad rags on to discuss her renewal series. Suddenly, with an ashen face, stifling a scream, she pointed above my head. I turned around to see these two big eyes staring at me, next door's peacock staring through the window. There's nothing like being in the country for fun and excitement. I could tell you loads more stories, but I haven't been allowed to. I've got some really funny ones. Anyway, in 1998, Roger joined ESco, and his first job was to find us new offices. To cut an incredibly long story short, he bought land from the MOD, fought very hard for planning, and built, single-handedly, Trinity House. As he often reminded me, and still does, it was on time and on budget. We moved in on the 29th of May 2006. And now I'm going to skip forwards because, as you know, I've had to cut a lot out of this talk. In 2014, see all those years I missed, we launched a new website with a rebrand, and that was Louise's project. I was allowed to put this bit in. She was determined to demonstrate the heart of ESco, and people loved it. I've had clients come to me and say, "Oh, I would really love to come and work for you." And people would stop me at events and say, "You know, we want to come and be part of the team at Trinity House." That website was really amazing. You're pointing at someone. Who are you pointing at? Oh, yeah, absolutely. You read it, didn't you? Sorry. That was a really good website. Well done, guys. I'm really nearly finished here. Since 1984, we've survived 4 recessions and a global pandemic. It's pretty incredible, really, that we're still standing. And in 2024, we're on an exciting journey with another rebrand and a new website. As those of you at ESco know, we're going through a tech transformation to ensure that all our technical tools are fit for now and the future. Our management team has been renamed to Senior Leadership Team, and we're currently working together to complete our strategy and future targets. All will be revealed in the coming months, but I have a taster. We were asked to identify our purpose and our passion succinctly, and we spent a long time, didn't we, with little sticky notepads and things, and we came up with this one line, which actually Louise managed to sort of pull everything together and come up with this: happy staff, happy clients, healthy profits. Now, we all agreed, and I hope you do too, that that has got to be the recipe for a successful business in one simple line. Lastly, very nearly, I'm especially proud that those 2 babies have grown up to become women who actually wanted to work at ESco. They both started at the bottom of the ladder, working very hard for many years to get where they are today. In fact, I was harder on them, I think, than anybody else. And I even sacked Louise once. That's how bad it was. She'll tell you the story, I know, but she's had another glass of wine. We have a great team of people at ESco with a strong senior leadership team, which consists of Louise, Claire and I, Lee Turbard. Put your hand up, Lee, where are you? Lee Turbard, there he is. Alistair Wood, John McHale, and Rob Green, who is sunning himself in Mallorca or somewhere. Morocco, oh, lovely. In August next year, I will step up to be chairwoman, and Louise will replace me as managing director. And though I'll be stepping away from the day-to-day running of ESco, I'll still be on the senior leadership team, if they will have me, involved in all the exciting decisions that we make as we forge ahead towards the next 40 years with Louise at the helm. With over 50 wonderful people working at ESco, we are really ready to face the future with confidence. So, I haven't got a glass again, I'm always saying cheers without glass. Thank you everyone for joining us in our celebrations. Please raise your glasses. Cheers to ESco for the next 40 years.
We have another a little surprise for you, Sue. A little video, which is not one you have already seen. Oh. Another one, so get comfortable, everybody.